Shalom. All praises to the Heavenly Father, Anuku Yah. Praise be to the earthly mother, the Pacha Mama, and all of her earthly angels, the Erkadeshoi. Praise be to the Holy Spirit, the Kaheh, in the name of his only begotten Son, Motsah the Lamb, unification to the nation. So I just ended up resetting my computer, so we're good to go now. I lost a lot of my work, but that's okay. It's hard to save, some of my stuff. I know I could just put the links up, but that doesn't really save the spots that I'm in those links. So it doesn't really do me any good. But anyway, as I said, we're going to touch on the kingdom of Chola. But first, let's do a little recap. What was David known for? What was Solomon known for? Well, David was the first king in Jerusalem whose reign was later looked back on as a golden era. He is known both as a great fighter and as a sweet singer of Israel. Right? But what is he also known for? What is he mainly actually known for? Because he was the first king of a united Israel. But who united Israel? David, second king of ancient Israel. He founded the Judean dynasty and united all the tribes of Israel under a single monarch. His son Solomon expanded the empire that David built. David is an important figure in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So David started it and Solomon finished it. Solomon spread it all over the world. Right? David, he colonized the lands that, he already really had. Mainly the lands, I believe he conquered the Philistines and pushed the Jebusites all the way up north and, into the Chachapoya area, into Quito. He also took the West Indies for the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim. So he did a lot of stuff, man. My brother, he's actually Haitian, and he said the people of Haiti said that they owe that land to King David. King David colonized that land for them. Interesting. Solomon is known for being king of Israel who built the first temple in Jerusalem. Hold on. This music is a bit too loud for me. It's probably not loud on your guys' side, but it's loud for me. Actually, that doesn't even make it. Let's turn it down here. Alright, that's better. Okay. So what was Solomon then known for? Solomon is known for being king of Israel who built the first temple in Jerusalem. He was also the second after his father David and the last king of a unified Israel, which was at the height of its power during his reign. Right? Now, what have we gone over regarding the Incans? Because this matters regarding what I'm going to say with this video. Who built Machu Picchu? Pachacuti, right? And we've gone over Pachacuti is King David, but Pachacuti and his son Tupac, their stories, they're kind of mixed up and intertwined. Some of the things regarding the Incan legends, some of the things that David did, Solomon did, and vice versa. So I'm just making sure that you guys understand that, because Pachacuti's son, he sailed across the Pacific Ocean and brought back spices and gold and animals and married a princess. Sounds exactly like Solomon, right? 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 28. And they went to Ophir and acquired 420 talents of gold there and brought it to King Solomon. And when Queen Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bear spices, and very much gold, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king which he told her not. And when the Queen Sheba had seen all Solomon's wisdom, and the house he had built, and the meat on his table, and the sittings of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their appeal, and his cupbearers, which is absent, by which he went up unto the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. And of course, there's there's that whole thing where people think that Queen Sheba was in East Africa. I do not agree with that. Her descendants can be in East Africa, but she did not come from East Africa. Why? Because the people of Ophir and Sheba, they come from Joktan. They come from the Pacific Islands. Ophir, I say that's in the Philippines. Now where's Sheba? I say that's Malaysia. We're going to get into it. So where else are we? The queen of the South shall rise up in the judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it. For she came from the uttermost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, a greater than Solomon is here. This is referencing Queen Sheba. But what did Messiah say? What did Motsah say? He said that she was from the south, right? The south. The hell is this? She came from the south, right? Let's go real quick to Joshua 15. And the uttermost cities of the tribe of the children of Judah toward the coast of Edom southward were as follows. And you see all these different places that are named. These places are supposed to be relatively close to Egypt. And you see Ziklag here. Ziklag is the place where Aki's people left from over the ocean to get into the promised land. Right? So what am I trying to say by this? If Queen Sheba came from the south, Ziklag's in the south, and Egypt's in the south, then Egypt must be in this area. And Sheba must be in this area. This is the south. Yemen. What does Yemen mean in Hebrew? South. This is the south. This is the east. Right? We're in the center of the earth. I don't know why it's like this. In old maps, this is called the South Sea and this is called the North Sea. Don't ask me. I don't know. It might be Egyptian directions or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, let's move on. So I found this interesting because we've gone over this before, but this gives me a new meaning as to what does Peru mean. What does Peru mean? I believe Kurameo did a video on this a long time ago, and the fact that this has a connection with quote-unquote Egypt. And Peru is connected to Egypt because this whole place is Egypt. Right? It's Canaan, it's Egypt, it's Sumer, it's Mesopotamia. It's all those things. So, let's get into the Chola Dynasty. The Chola Dynasty was a Tamil thalassocratic empire of southern India, one of the longest ruling dynasties in the world's history. The earliest debatable references to the Chola are the inscriptions from the 3rd century BCE left by Ashoka of the Maurya Empire as one of the 3 crowned kings of Tamilakam, along with Chera and Pandya. The dynasty continued to govern over varying territory until the 13th century CE. Despite these ancient origins, the period when it is appropriate to speak of a Chola Empire only begins with the medieval Cholas. What? Hold on. So, they just said that the early inscriptions were in the 3rd century BCE, but they didn't have an empire until the Middle Ages. Does that make any sense? I mean, according to people who are trying to hide history, it does make sense. You know? But that's cool. The heartland of the Cholas was the fertile valley of the Kaveri River, but they ruled a significantly larger area at the height of their power, from the latter half of the 9th century till the beginning of the 13th century. And again, a lot of this stuff that where people, a lot of the history in the Middle Ages, it is such a lie. The stuff in the Middle Ages is like they've took a bunch of things that happened in the ancient times and just crammed it in this area of time. And then they can just say that anything happened during the time that they've replaced. There's nothing more that they could really do, but it's really ridiculous. A lot of this stuff did not happen when they're saying it happened. The Incan Empire, they're trying to squeeze it into like a 200, 300 year period. And the natives like, no, this stuff happened a while ago. Like, what do you mean? They're trying to say that it only happened a few hundred years before the Spanish got there. And they're doing the same thing with the Chola Empire, saying that it was only here for this amount of time. Only here since the Middle Ages. Yet there are inscriptions from the BCs. Now, under Rajaraja Chola I and his successors, Rajendra Trolla I, and the rest of them, the dynasty became a militaristic, economic, and cultural power in South Asia and Southeast Asia. The power of the new empire was proclaimed to the Eastern world by the expedition to the Ganges, which Rajendra Trolla I undertook by the naval raids on cities and the city-state of this place, as well as by the repeated embassies to China. When I show you the video at the end of this video, it's all going to make sense, right? I'm telling you it's going to make sense. During this period, the Chola territory stretched from the islands of the Maldives in the south as far north as the banks of the Godavari River and Andhra Pradesh. Rajaraja Chola conquered peninsular South India, parts of which is now Sri Lanka, and occupied the islands of the Maldives. Rajendra Trolla sent a victorious expedition to North India that touched the river Ganges and defeated the Pala ruler. Okay, so he did a bunch of stuff. He did a bunch of conquering, right? And he took what his father did, Rajaraja Chola the First, and he did way more. He built on top of it. And this was the Chola's golden age. Does that sound familiar? And you're going to see what Rajaraja Chola did. In fact, let's click on him. I even have him open. Wait. Let's get Rajendra Trolla open as well. Rajaraja Chola I, often described as Rajaraja the Great, was a Chola emperor, chiefly remembered for reinstating the Chola Empire and ensuring its supremacy in South India and Indian Ocean. His extensive empire included the Pandya country, southern Tamil Nadu, the Chira country, central Kerala and western Tamil Nadu, and northern Sri Lanka. And I think that's BS. I think that's complete BS. If you're gonna ask me, I think only one of those places were in southern India. I think two of them were in other places. Yeah, it was three, right? Three main places that the Cholas ruled over. Right? Rajaraja inherited a kingdom whose boundaries were limited by the traditional Chola territory centered around this region. At the time of his ascension, the Chola kingdom was relatively small and was still recovering from the I don't even know why I'm trying to say that. These invasions in the preceding years. Rajaraja turned it into a efficiently administered empire which possessed a powerful army and a strong navy. You hear that? That's what he started. Rajaraja's inscriptions start to appear in this district. The Chola subjugation of Kerala can be dated to the early years of the 11th century. The Sinur inscription of Rajaraja states that he destroyed the Pandyan capital, Madurai, conquered the haughty kings. Some of these victories in this place were perhaps won by Prince Rajendra Trolla for his father. After defeating the Pandyas, Rajaraja adopted the title Pandya Kulashani, thunderbolt to the race of the Pandyans, and the Pandyan country came to be known as Rajaraja Mandalam or Rajaraja Paninadu. While describing the Rajaraja's campaign in this place, or the South, this person, Grant of Rajendra Trolla I, states that he sees certain royal, oh man, these words are crazy. Identification of this prince, either a Pandya prince or general of the Pandyan king, or a Kongu Chera prince, remains unresolved. After consolidating his rule in the south, Rajaraja assumed the title of Mumundi Chola, the Chola who wears 3 crowns, a reference to his control over the 3 ancient Tamil countries of Cholas, the Pandyas, and Cheras, the 3. So he was king of all 3 areas. Interesting. Now, Rajendra Trolla was the Tamil Chola Emperor of southern India who succeeded his father Rajaraja Chola to the throne during that time. During his reign, he extended the influence of the Chola Empire to the banks of the river Ganga in North India and across the Indian Ocean to the west and Southeast Asia, making the Chola Empire one of the most powerful maritime empires of India. Now, I'm not going to continue to bore you guys with all this reading. Let's continue. Tamilakam refers to the geographic region inhabited by the ancient Tamil people. Tamilakam covered today's Tamil Nadu and the rest of those places. The ancient Tamil country was divided into kingdoms. The best known among them were the Cheras, the Cholas, the Panyans, the Pallavas. During the Sangam period, Tamil culture began to spread outside Tamilakam. Ancient Tamil settlements were also found in Sri Lanka. Right? Again, going back to here. What was this place? What was the Pandyan kingdom? And why is it called Peru? What is with all this Peru stuff? I don't know, man. That's what we're trying to find out. 3 crowned kings. The 3 crowned rulers, or 3 glorified by heaven or world of the 3. Primarily known as the Vendhar, refers to the triumvirate of the Chera, Chola, and Pandya, who dominated the politics of the ancient Tamil country, Tamilakam. They would frequently wage war against one another, until a period of instability. I'm not reading. Excuse me. They would frequently wage war against one another under a period of instability until the imperial period of Rajaraja I, who united Tamilakam under one leadership. So there you go. The etymology of the Tamil word for the 3 kings, Movenhar, comes from Tamil. So strictly it should be translated as Lord as opposed to King, which in Tamil is Khan, or Khan. Right? They are mentioned as Megasthean. Wait, I'm not even reading this stuff, bro. This person among Tamil literature who was the first to call them 3 glorified by heaven. Ptolemy and the Periplus of the Etherian Sea mention 3 kingdoms ruling Tamilakam. So, was Peru one of those kingdoms? I don't know. I don't know. This is supposedly the Chola kingdom. But actually, their influence reached very, very far. And we're going to get into it. The Cholas, the golden age of Tamil culture. It's the golden age of it. I guess you could pause if anything's interesting to you. Let me see. The Chola Empire extended its power over the whole of South India from each coast. In the north, the empire stretched to the Tungab. I ain't reading this, bro. And far south, even to include Sri Lanka for a short time. During expeditions, the Chola kings established a Tamil culture over the controlled regions and introduced Brahminical rituals in the temples. That wouldn't surprise me if they were doing some sort of aphrodisiacs, because that's very indicative of the kings of Judah. The Chola kings were the champions of art, agriculture, and literature. The cultural movement that had been initiated by these kings reached a crescendo under the reign of the Cholas. Culture and religion were inseparably fused. Art and design reached an excellent, unprecedented, reached an, what? That's not how you use unprecedented. Okay. Um, let me see. So both of these temples, that of the Chola kings, they're World Heritage sites, of course, right? Towering structures, intricate carvings, beauty, and symmetry of these temple complexes are perfect examples of the creative genius patronized by the Chola kings. This text is way too small, bro, so I'm leaving this in the description. I'm straining my eyes trying to read this stuff. Now, isn't this interesting? And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had made an end of building his own house, and the house of the Lord, and the wall of Jerusalem round about. So again, well, not again. We're going to show you, right? We're going to show you because the Cholas also married a princess, right? From one of these empires over here. Now, of course, this was in Malaysia, but my point is that a lot of these stories are very similar. It's either those stories have been changed or these stories are fake. Like, I don't know what the difference is, or they're just not talking about each other, to be fair enough. We're going to keep digging. Now, there's a reason why I wanted to mention those three. Prester John. No, I'm not talking about the one that transforms into a Naga and is the Messiah for people who don't believe in Hamashiach and Motsah. But I'm talking about just the Davidic line, the kings of Judah. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about a seed line. Prester John. So this person thinks it was Rajaraja Trolla II, the first Christian emperor of the three Indias. He was the grandson through his mother of. Okay, I ain't reading all this, but he was emperor of the three Indias, right? Now this is important. We're gonna get into why. Let me see. Just give me 1 second. So this, hold on. It was around this time that Ethiopia was considered to be part of the Third India due to its allegiance or alliance through marriage of the royal dynasties of the Third India and Australia. So this person is putting the Third India in Australia, right? But what is Australia? Australia is Antarctica. Antarctica is South America. South America is North America. It's all connected. And that's going to make sense when we get into the writings of Ronald Sanders. And Dragon Boys covered this before, but I'm going to cover it myself. On her mother's death in 1350, This person became the Amazon High Queen, and her son became the king of this place. I'm sorry, this must be brutal if you're not watching the actual video. This isn't really saying much, honestly. Just look at this guy's map though. It's very interesting. I thought he put Thebes Sea here before. I guess he must have changed it. No, he has Thebes River right here. Now, this is also another something that I was thinking about. Was the inland sea of Australia, was that actually the Red Sea? Something to think about, man. I don't know. I don't really know. Thought we just heard this song. Read out of music? How? There's no way. Alright. Let's continue. Now, this is interesting. Were the Davidic princes of Solomon of Ptolemais and Canaan of Thema actually the sons of Prester John, whose grandfather was Prince David of Georgia? They were probably his sons by his first wife, who was a Jewish princess and sister to the exarch Solomon ben Histai. There is no such thing as being something through the mother unless the males are all dead. You know, you can't just be royalty just because, you know, your mother is this. Everyone has to be dead if you're going to go by your mother. I'm just saying. No, everyone goes by their paternal lineage. And look at this hijack. Solomon, solely the first, married the fair-haired, white, pale-skinned princess and heiress of the Rubani of Australia. And what is Rubani? That stands for Reuben. Their son, David, Dewey, the first Rubani, king of the Rubani, the Gadi, and the Mani, Reuben, Manasseh, and Gad. And they were ruling over there. Was the ancestor of King Solomon, Soli the fourth. His brother, Prince Judah, Udi, Lubani, was the father of Rabbi Isaac. Okay. Look at this. Let's get a laugh real quick. And brought the very pale skin and blonde hair into the famous rabbinic families of Europe. Okay, sure he did. Sure he did. So yeah, this person puts a lot of stock in Australia. I wonder why. This is a very old place. This is why I say that that was ancient Egypt, or ancient Egypt was in some sort of area here. If it's not Australia, then it's the submerged land. If it's not the submerged land, it's Australia. And if it's not either, then it's Antarctica. But Egypt was in this area. At least the Mizraim, I should say, not Egypt. Because if we're really being precise about where, I guess the people who made Egypt, they came from the Americas. To me, that's kind of obvious. I'm just gonna be real. Let's look at some of these Tamil flags. Now this is interesting, that the Pallava royal insignia was the lion and the bull, which was interchangeable. That's interesting. And the Cholas is a pouncing tiger. Is this a hijack? I don't know. But I wonder why the Cholas, why did they hold the lion so dearly? A giant lion sepulcher called Shem Akinar in the form of a Chola emblem stares at you. So is this implying that the lion is the Chola emblem? Because sometimes they change like images and flags. That doesn't surprise me when they do stuff like that. Oh, this is interesting. Stuff just it gets deep, man. Okay, so they're still saying that the Chola emblem is the tiger. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Says the jumping tiger. This is the emblem on the Sri Lanka flag, though. I find that to be interesting. I don't know. This Tony the Tiger thing looks weird. It just does to me. It looks weird. The Pallava Dynasty. They're all about lions. Didn't it say that Rajaraja Trolla defeated the Pallava? Let me see. This is real time. Yeah, it said that there was enmity between these two. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe if I dug deeper, I would have found something. But I'm gonna continue. Okay. Simhakanar. This is the uh, sepulcher. And going back to this, this is supposedly the capital city of Rajendra Trolla. This is the city that he built. Now we're going to get into some connections with Peru. Actually, I didn't read this article yet. Because they're trying to do DNA studies. I don't really trust that. Not when it comes to, you know, with the Americas. I don't trust that stuff. But let me see. So it says they were compared for a genealogical base of more than 3,000 people to reconstruct the genealogical tree of all individuals, said Mr. Fujita. We finally reduced this base to almost 200 people sharing genetic similarities close to the Incan nobility. I'm confused. I thought all the males were dead. I thought you ate all the bones or something. I thought you couldn't test the males. So what is this talking about? But let's continue. The study released some preliminary studies in April in the review Molecular Genetics and Genomics. The conclusion we came to is that the Tiwantinsuyo nobility is descended from two lines, one in the region of Lake Titicaca, the other in the mountains of Parcarita Tambo, I don't know, in Peru. that confirms the legends. Okay, this is not saying much, bro. So let's go on to this. Who discovered the Americas? The Hindus were mighty navigators and pioneers of culture centuries before Columbus was born. Yeah, but where did the Hindus come from? Let me see. This was interesting. Even today, Cambodia's king bears the title of the great Varman rulers of India, and Bali has a Hindu Raja. Bali, remember that, has a Raja. Hindu migration to the Americas was vigorous from the 1st to the 12th century AD. Cambodia, the ancient Cambodia, was one of the earliest to receive the culture of India. The name of its river, Mekong, was derived from Ma Ganga, or Ganga, Mother Ganges. In the 1st century AD, a Brahmin called this person came to Cambodia from Kanchi, the capital of Pallava kings in South India, married the Cambodia princess, Soma, and was elected king of the country. Champa, at present Vietnam, figures prominently in the story of India's cultural expansion. Vietnam was the footboard for the pilgrims to America. A prince of Kalinga founded the Hindu state of Java in the 1st century. Java is the ancient Java. Okay, I don't know what all this stuff is, but the point is that whomever was in India, they were great navigators of the sea. But my question is, where did they come from? Did they just spawn out of India, or did they come from somewhere? Because the oldest Hindu stuff says that civilization came from the Mayans. Oh, now we're getting into India Superior, and the fact that Mexico was called India, right? That was the first India. The hell is this? Uh-oh. Don't start lagging on me again. Incas and India, the God connection. When it comes to Mesoamerican and South American civilizations, nothing is much known about their gods and mythologies. While there are sufficient scriptures written about the ancient Eastern civilizations such as Mesopotamia, Greece, India, and Egypt, there doesn't seem to be much light thrown on the pre-Columbian American civilizations such as Incas, Mayans, and Aztecs. Why do you think? This article is an attempt to throw more light about their mythologies. This is the first article in the series dealing with the Incas and their mythologies. Most South American concede that their gods came from distant lands beyond oceans. Wrong. While mainstream archaeologists and skeptics dismiss this, ancient alien theorists claim that these gods were aliens who came down to Earth similar to those who came down to India, Sumer, Egypt, and Israel. But could there be more plausible theories that prove that these mythologies may not be myths? I'm not trying to get Peruvian history. I'm trying to get the connections. While at the outset, it may seem that the Incan people were describing the biblical God and quoting from the biblical text, a closer look gives us a different story. Oh, you're about to tell us how to think. Okay. One must understand that there were older Eastern civilizations that had many similar mythologies thousands of years ago. The Incan mythology may have in reality been a closer resemblance with what has been written in the Indian sacred texts. Now that is true, because a lot of those, the religion of Judaism and Islam and things of that sort, that stuff's new. It came from here, came from the East, and then the East came from here. Again, everything moved across the Pacifics. But according to Hindu mythology, a demon king, Asura, known as Virokana, and few of his people set out to spread the divine knowledge to distant lands. To give a brief background, Virokana was the son of Prahlada and father of Mahabali, another ardent disciple of Vishnu. Both demon kings are famous in Indian mythology. According to Hindu texts, it is said that both. Alright, honestly, I'm getting a little annoyed because if you really studied the Hindu stuff, then you know that the stuff came from over here. But anyway, let's move down. Vera in Sanskrit means brave, powerful man, or hero. Kocha in Latin or Andean means sea snail that resides in sea foam. Hence, Viracocha essentially translates to he of the sea foam. This can mean that Viracocha and his gods either came on boats, ships, or some other sea craft. This may be easily dismissed as nonsense. However, considering Phoenicians traveled to North America at least 2,000 years ago using boats, this may have been indeed possible. Alternately, Kocha may have come from the Sanskrit word kosha, meaning something, which consists of, while one may argue that Quechua was the official language of the Incas, linguists have found that the language of pre-Incan civilization may have indeed come from archaic Sanskrit, Persian, and Greek, or may have been influenced by these languages. No, they're an older language. What do you... I'm sorry, I have to go on something else. I thought this had some drop in it. Now, I'm just going to show you a lot of these similarities. This is why this is not Egypt, bro. This is not Egypt. It's not the Egypt. Because this is not even the Egypt, and this is older than this. So it doesn't make any sense. The Incan versus the Egyptian. You can see... excuse me. You can see everything here. You can see that these people, whoever made Egypt, they came from South America. Right? Same people, which I believe are the sons of Japheth, or the people of Canaan, or a mixture of both. Pre-Incan versus Egyptian. Very, very similar, bro. Difference is you actually find skulls here. You only find inscriptions here. Meaning this was their homeland. So whatever that land is that they're saying is Egypt, and it's not Egypt, in the scriptures it's called Mizraim. It's not called Egypt. Egypt just means where they're in bondage in. But it seems that the land that they were in bondage in, right, was in the land of Mizr. But it seems like Egypt was all over the world. You weren't escaping Egypt. Are you escaping Egypt today? I thought we were supposed to be brought into Egypt again, on ships this time. Just scrolling through so you guys can see. I'm starting to lose my voice. So we got to finish this up quickly. Not hastily, but quickly. See? And the Chaldeans, they built reed boats too. That's why I said, I don't know. Now this is very, very interesting. One of the greatest archaeological riddles and one of the grossest academic omissions of our time is the untold story of the parallel ruins left by two seemingly unrelated ancient civilizations, the ancient Mayas on one side of the Pacific Ocean and the ancient Balinese on the other. During the course of my research, I have uncovered several mysterious, unprecedented, and unexplained similarities in their agriculture, iconography, and religion. These similarities are so striking and profound that the Mayans and Balinese seem to have been twin civilizations. Bro, you can't make this up. What did I say where half the tribe of Manasseh was? Southeast Asia, right? That's what I said. Where's the other half? Central America. They were the Mayans. These are the children of Joseph. And you can see all of the the similarities are so uncanny, it's not even funny, bro. Like, this had to have been these people. These people had to have come from over here and colonized this land. They were given this land. By Moses. They even have Chicana crosses and everything. Crazy. So there you go, bro. Let's see. Do we have anything else? Oh, how could I forget this? This is the icing on the cake. You guys ready for this? Let's start with this. The Fortunate Islands are in the Great Sea, on the left-hand side, near the end of the west, but they are nearby. Isidore of Seville said in his 15th book, they are called Fortunate Island. They are called fortunate because they are filled with all sorts of good things, grains, fruits, and trees. And the pagans believe that paradise is here on account of the temperateness of the sun and fertility of the soil. He's talking about the Americas and the islands of the Americas. Isidore says that the trees here grow to at least 150 feet in height and are filled with fruits and birds. There is milk and honey here, especially on the island of Capri, which is so named for the multitude of goats on it. What is he talking about? This sounds like the land near the equator. That's what it sounds like. Canary Island is nearby, called Canary on account of the multitude of large, powerful dogs found there. Pliny, master of geography, said that among the Fortunate Islands there is one on which all good things of the earth grow, and all kinds of fruits, without being sown or planted. On the heights of the mountains, the trees are never without leaves or fruits, and they have a lovely smell. People eat from them part of the year. Then they harvest the grains. This is why the pagans of the Indies maintain that when they die, their souls go to these islands and live forever in the aroma of these fruits. They believe that this is their paradise, when in truth, this is only a fable. According to you. According to you. I think paradise is much better than, living as smelling fruits, but that's neither here nor there. Now this is what I wanted to get to. So, where then is this remarkable country? Our magnificence, writes Prester John, dominates the three Indias and extends to farther India, where the body of St. Thomas the Apostle rests. It reaches through the desert towards the place of the rising of the sun, and continues through the valley of the deserted Babylon, close to the Tower of Babel. Suddenly the vague immensity takes on a biblical tinge. This is deepened when John informs us that his territories comprise the Pishon, which is one of the 4 rivers that rise up out of the terrestrial paradise, according to the 2nd chapter of Genesis. Furthermore, like the land of Havilah, around which the biblical Pishon flows, excuse me, John's country contains gold and onyx, and it flows with milk and honey. Like, well, what country has the most or the best onyx stones? That's in the Pacific Islands. My voice. It also flows with milk and honey. So where's the land of milk and honey? It must be the India that is toward the sun rising. Not India, but India Superior. The 3rd India. We're going to get to it. A hint at the location of this realm is provided by Genesis 2, verse 13, which tells us that another of the 4 rivers of Eden, the Gihon, which compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. John tells us that his palace is in Shusha, the ancient capital of Persia, but this is also implied proximity to Ethiopia in the vague geographical imagination of medieval Europe. Now look at his note. This confused geography has ancient and honorable roots. The first verse of the book of Esther describes the realm of the Persian king Ahasuerus, whose palace also was at Susa, as extending from India even unto Ethiopia. In Greek and Roman authors, there is a similar vagueness about a vast region taken in by terms like India and Ethiopia, the latter even in its narrowest sense comprising a much larger area than present-day Ethiopia and beginning just south of the first cataract of the Nile, and about its relationship with the better-known Persia and the apocryphal Acts of St. Thomas. The apostle moves easily between Persia and India, starting roughly with the 5th century apocryphal writer, the pseudo Abdias, who described the exploits of Apostle Thomas, Bartholomew, and Matthew in each of the 3 Indias. See? The 3 Indias is not a fake concept, it is very real. So where are they? This letter concept became a standard one in the Middle Ages. One of the 3 Indias faced Ethiopia, according to the pseudo-Abdus. The second one faced Persia. And the third occupied the ends of the earth, between the ocean and the realm of darkness. The third became especially fruitful for this geographical imagination, the region of untold islands, in which the plural term Indias, the etymologically one and the same as Indies, came to rest once and for all. There also was less mysterious, more valid definitions of the 3 Indias among medieval geographers, but for most Europeans, even learned ones, the term covered a vast and distant region of dark-skinned people, accumulating in the countless array of islands in one direction, and in Ethiopia, the biblical Cush, in the other. So what did this just say? This just said that the word India and Indies are synonymous. They're one and the same. And there's 3 regions of the Indies. There's one that faces Persia. There's one that faces Ethiopia. And there's one that occupies the end of the earth. So one is in Africa, one is in Asia, and one is in the Americas. Those are your 3 Indias. You have king, you have Rajaraja the First, Rajaraja Chola the First, king of the 3 crown princes or 3 crown kings. What kings do you think those are? King of the 3 Indias, Prester John, the Davidic line. So I got a video to show you guys. My voice is done, so I'm going to play this and end the video.
Indian history can be a bit tricky for the uninitiated. In an effort to build a cohesive story for a nation whose people have been stitched together into a sort of post-colonial Frankenstein, we're given only a thin slice of the whole. The Indus Valley Civilization, the Mauryas, the Guptas, the Mughals, the British Raj, and the independence movement. Simple, clean, and limited. And quite frankly, a bit stale. Here's the dirty little secret of Indian history. We rarely learn about its most interesting players, only its most convenient ones. Well, that's about to change right now. Meet the Cholas, a visionary maritime empire from the deep south of India, in a region known as Tamil country. The Cholas were many things, warlike, opportunistic, and politically manipulative, but above all, they were ambitious. By the medieval era, they had fashioned themselves into a regional hegemon that dominated their contemporaries in India and Southeast Asia, and established extensive intercontinental trade.
Look at where those areas are. Pay attention. What are those areas?
Networks. Perhaps the single most impressive feat of the Cholas was their naval invasion of Southeast Asia in 1025 CE, part of a multi-generational effort to gain supremacy over international sea trade. The story of that invasion, and the century of pseudo-colonial intervention that followed, is one that challenges conventional perceptions of Indian empire. But let's dig into some historical context first. The Chola Dynasty first came into being sometime around 300 BCE in the Kaveri River Delta. From the beginning, the Cholas were reliant on the sea for wealth, their ports visited by ships from lands as far away as China and Rome. In the early medieval era, the Cholas were nothing more than a mere vassal kingdom to the dominant Pallavas. That all changed, however, when the Pallavas found themselves embroiled in a series of conflicts in 850 CE. From their core city of Urayur, the Cholas exploited an opportunity to capture the city of Thanjavur from the Pallavas, thereby wresting control of the region from their former overlords. Over the next 150 years, the Cholas went through what might be considered a civilizational golden age. Tamil arts, culture, and language flourished. Government administration was centralized and improved. Using processed palm leaves as a sort of paper substitute, the Cholas kept copious records, from administrative reports to legal disputes to internal reviews of official misconduct. Meanwhile, surveys and centralized revenue collection ensured fairness in taxation. The Cholas also introduced elected councils whose officials were subject to regular auditing. These and other reforms undercut the role of local feudatories, thus consolidating Chola power and creating the infrastructure necessary to maintain a large, well-run empire. But it was this man, Rajendra Trolla I, who would put them on the world stage. As crown prince, Rajendra led campaigns against neighboring rivals. Under the command of his father, Rajaraja Chola, he conquered the Western Ganga dynasty, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. Together, they extended the boundaries of the empire over much of South India and Sri Lanka, defeating their enemies and forging deep political and familial alliances with the Telugus of Vengi. Thus, by the time Rajendra Trolla I ascended to the throne in 1014 CE, he had inherited an empire on the precipice of historical greatness. Freshly coronated and no doubt influenced by his father's expansionary policies, Rajendra began to shape into being a true cross-regional empire. Rajendra was a busy man. In less than a decade, he used his navy to blockade and subdue rebellious lords along the Malabar coast, carved out territories belonging to the western Chalukyas, supported his nephew's succession claims in Telugu country, finished his father's conquest of Sri Lanka, occupied the Maldives, and established Chola dominance over the Andaman Islands, thus securing a forward base into Southeast Asia. He also installed his sons as regional viceroys to further entrench central control over these dominions. But even after all of this, he was just getting started. In 1023 CE, Rajendra decided to raid northern India. He marched with his armies to the northeast, all the way up to the banks of the river Ganges. On the way, he defeated the forces of Kalinga, and, with the path cleared to Bengal, descended upon the Pala kingdom and defeated them too. Rajendra was so pleased with himself that when he defeated the Pala kingdom, he filled up large tanks with water from the river Ganges and transported them all the way back to the Chola heartland. To commemorate the victory, he constructed a formidable temple at the center of a new capital city, Gangaikonda Cholapuro, meaning conqueror of the Ganges, and blessed it with his pillaged holy water. But why all this warmongering? Why risk everything to subdue distant enemies? See, the Indian subcontinent lies at the center of an oceanic trade superhighway known as the Maritime Silk Road. The importance of the Maritime Silk Road cannot be overstated. For thousands of years, ancient powers moved significant cargo along these routes. Early writings in Tamil country describe streets packed to the brim with goods from around the world, while government records in Tang Dynasty China indicate that the quantity of goods entering through its licensed ports generated a large portion of the country's total tax revenues. Control over the Maritime Silk Road was invaluable. Military and administrative dominance gave major powers the ability to position their economic machinery, such as trade guilds, more favorably in the global markets. The Chola military offensives were part of a strategy to suppress rivals that might otherwise compromise their supremacy over the Maritime Silk Road trade. It's hardly a coincidence that nearly a half-century of conflict led to Chola control over most of the prominent trade centers along India's coast. We've mentioned trade guilds a few times, so what role did they play in all of this? For most of Tamil history, trade guilds were influential in both the economic and political spheres. By the medieval era, trade guilds had grown extremely powerful, with some wielding greater de facto authority than local feudatories. There were many trade guilds, the 500 Lords of Ayavolu, the Anjuvanam, and the Manigramam, among others. Each had their own specialty, history, and supply networks. An 11th century inscription describing the 500 said the following about the guild. Famed throughout the world, having 18 cities at the 4 points of the compass, born to be wanderers over many countries, by land routes and water routes penetrating into the regions of the 6 continents, with superior elephants, well-bred horses, large sapphires, moonstones, pearls, rubies, diamonds, cardamoms, cloves, sandal, camphor, musk, saffron, and other perfumes and drugs. Selling wholesale or hawking about on their shoulders, preventing the loss of customs duties, filling up the emperor's treasury of gold and his armory of weapons. The guilds likely wielded significant behind-the-scenes influence. We know that the trade guilds would maintain their own flag standards, as well as their own private armies and fleets. We also know that some trade guilds lent money to kings, including Rajaraja Trolla and Rajendra Trolla. It was a risky proposition to go against the demands of the trade guilds. If Rajendra were to get on their bad side, he might find his rivals suddenly equipped and funded to stage a takeover. To put it bluntly, the trade guilds benefited from Chola dominance of the Maritime Silk Road trade. Whether they actively pushed for war remains a mystery, but it's fair to say, yeah, they probably did. Having secured their dominance over the Maritime Silk Road vis-a-vis other Indian powers, one would think that the Cholas could finally sit back and enjoy their hard-earned rewards, but that was not the case. Srivijaya, a powerful thalassocracy based in the Malay archipelago, was actively interfering with trade and damaging Chola interests. See, by the turn of the 11th century, the Maritime Silk Road was undergoing some significant changes. The decline of the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad was matched by the rise of the Fatimid dynasty in Egypt. Ships leaving from the Fatimid territories would scoot past the Horn of Africa and toward Chola ports, where goods would be sold and retransported by Tamil crews headed towards Southeast Asia and China. Meanwhile, on the other side of Asia, the Song dynasty ushered in an era of unprecedented economic prosperity. Everyone was lining up for an egg from the Song dynasty golden goose, including, of course, the Fatimids. Thanks to the creation of powerful pro-trade dynasties on both ends of the Maritime Silk Road, the sea trade was booming in a way that it had not for several centuries. Normally, ships would stop at both South Indian and Southeast Asian ports, but advancements in shipbuilding technology meant that ships could travel farther, faster, and more safely than ever before, making 2 stops unnecessary. Soon, the central region of the Maritime Silk Road played host to an intense and underhanded competition between Srivijaya and the Cholas.
So, just to make a comment real quick, you can see that a lot of these territories are really where the Israelites were. You know, in the so-called Middle East, in this land right here, in some sort of way. Because again, this place over here is not Egypt. It's a colony, possibly of quote-unquote Egypt, or Tamari, or Peru, or the Mayans, but it's not Egypt. It's not Mizr, right? That has to be somewhere else. Now, if the land of Mizraim is not necessarily in the land of Canaan, it's not in Mesopotamia or Canaan, then it has to be in another place that has access in a way such as this. As he even said, this is like a meeting point, a maritime meeting point. And this doesn't even include the land that was there before.
For years, Srivijaya bribed Orang Laut, colloquially known as sea gypsies, to stop them from engaging in piracy and interfering with trade.
Now, this is something that I did not have enough time to cover, but what is a gypsy? If UBTV's video, America's Egypt #9, he goes over that the gypsies were called gypsies because gypsy comes from the word Egypt, Egyptsies. And when you look it up on Google, they say, oh, that was by mistake. They called them Egyptsies because they're from India. And then they just called these people the sea gypsies. So, what is India? Is India Egypt? Oh, is the three Indias actually the three Egypts because they're coming from quote unquote Egypt, or really Tamari, colonies of Sumer.
The Sea Gypsies were Aboriginal communities who lived along the coastlines of Srivijaya territory. Like most pirates in history, they were frustrating and useful in equal measure. The Sea Gypsies received a portion of customs proceeds from Srivijaya, and in turn promised to do something less violent with their time, like fishing. Once the trade conflict with the Cholas heated up, however, Srivijaya actively encouraged the Sea Gypsies to re-engage in piracy, this time on their behalf. The Sea Gypsies began to force all passing ships to dock at Srivijaya ports and pay customs, resupply, and more. As a result, Chola ports were being made redundant. There is also evidence that Tamil trade guilds were being actively suppressed in Southeast Asian ports due to Srivijaya's influence. Interference with maritime Silk Road trade no doubt prompted Rajendra to attack the Srivijaya and normalize the situation. After all, he and his father had not spent decades warring and subduing their maritime rivals in India simply to have the fruits of their labor rot on the vine. Srivijaya would have to be punished. The Chola invasion involved three major Southeast Asian players. Srivijaya, of course, but also Thumbelanga, a Malay kingdom based out of what is now southern Thailand, and Angkor, an ambitious peninsular kingdom based out of what is now Cambodia. In the early 11th century, the Cholas were a staunch ally of Angkor, while Srivijaya was allied with Thumbelanga. It's possible that religion played a part in this diplomatic arrangement. Thumbelanga and Srivijaya were Buddhist kingdoms, while Angkor and the Chola Empire were Hindu Shaivite. In the year 1025 CE, the kingdom of Angkor was embroiled in a conflict with Thumbelanga and requested military assistance from the Cholas. The Cholas agreed to help Angkor, likely knowing what would happen next. When the Cholas formally declared war on Thumbelanga, Srivijaya came to the aid of its ally and declared war on the Cholas and Angkor. With their inevitable conflict now made real, Rajendra Trolla gathered his navy and prepped for the subsequent invasion. The Chola navy was on the leading edge of naval technology for their time. In years past, Rajendra's father had imported the talents of Chinese and Arab shipbuilders to work on research and development for the Chola navy. With their help, the Cholas implemented critical naval technologies, including watertight hull innovations that allowed their fleet to traverse rougher seas, a mariner's compass, and further advancement of a flamethrower weapon not unlike the legendary Greek fire utilized by the Byzantine fleets.
Now, what do they say? Who made the compass? Because Solomon obviously had a compass, right? I think Big Judah made that video about that. And they were saying how the ancient Chinese first had the compass. But who are the ancient Chinese? The ancient Chinese, that was the king. That was Solomon. The Shang Dynasty, that was Solomon. So, the kings of Judah who colonized a lot of the world, as different kings, they had access to the compass. They had access to ships from Tarshish, from England, as well as different materials from China or Ziklag or Lud. So this is all this stuff is very similar to each other, man.
When the war began, Srivijaya was the main target. Rajendra split his fire-breathing fleet into two groups, the main invasion fleet and an auxiliary force. The auxiliary force was sent to the entrance of the Straits of Malacca, where the Srivijaya fleet was waiting, positioned to take on what they assumed would be the bulk of the Chola fleet. Little did Srivijaya know that the Chola main invasion fleet was sent south of Sumatra, positioned behind the island. With the element of surprise on their side, the Chola fleet circled around the island and made their way to Palembang, the southern capital. When they arrived, they sieged and sacked the city. Afterwards, the combined Chola forces pincered the Srivijaya fleet in the straits, defeating them easily. Why was this decisive maneuver allowed to happen? Well, Srivijaya did not anticipate that the main Chola invasion fleet had been outfitted with technology that allowed them to traverse the rough waters south of Sumatra. It wasn't an unreasonable blind spot. Moving an entire fleet south of Sumatra during the monsoon season had never been done before, and was seen as impossibly risky. After steamrolling the Srivijaya navy, the Chola forces laid siege to Kadaram, the northern capital of Srivijaya, and captured this important administrative and trade center for themselves. For the Cholas, conquest seems to have been uncompromising. They plundered countless treasures and took the Srivijaya king, Maharaja Sangrama, as their prisoner. With Srivijaya effectively subdued, the Cholas finally moved a portion of their fleet to battle with Tumberlinga and helped to quickly bring that kingdom under Angkor's control. The Southeast Asian invasion was an unequivocal success. In just a few months, the Cholas had defeated the mighty Srivijaya and ended a prosperous multi-century dynasty. Though the invasion brought an end to the Srivijaya Sailendra dynasty, its impact was manifold. Success emboldened Chola ambitions in Southeast Asia. For the next 100 years, they became intimately involved in Southeast Asian politics. The Cholas formed new alliances, performed raids, and generally used their influence to bully the weaker players so as to create an economically favorable situation, something of a pseudo-colonial approach. To entrench themselves further, the Cholas established permanent military garrisons in Srivijaya and Angkor territory to serve as remote forces for promoting their interests. The soft influence of the Cholas increased too. Tamil trade guilds came to dominate in the major commercial centers of Southeast Asia and southern China, and the Cholas sent regular political envoys to China, Angkor, Bagan, Pegu, Srivijaya, and other Asian powers, establishing closer diplomatic relations. In the wake of the invasion, Chola elite intermarried with Southeast Asian royalty. Rajendra, for example, is believed to have taken Onan Q, the daughter of the captured Srivijaya king Sangrama, as his wife. Since that time, Malay royalty claimed and continue to claim Chola heritage, and their princes have been variously named Raja Chulan, an attempt to recall this unique past. But intermarriage was more than just a historical curiosity. Close family relations meant that the Chola could more legitimately prop up claims of royalty that would be friendly to their interests. In 1077 CE, for example, a succession dispute in Kadaram led to direct Chola intervention. Rajendra's grandson, Kulotunga, conquered Kadaram on behalf of a Chola-descended claimant to the crown, putting him on the throne.
So that's all I really wanted to show you guys. Let me know what you guys think. I'm not gonna talk anymore because my throat done. May peace be with you. Selah Kala.